Hi, I'm Francis Hellier, and welcome to my brand new podcast, Metaverse. This is a podcast for the future-minded, a series for anyone on the hunt for the next big thing and all its possibilities and implications. This is Tomorrow's World Today. With each episode, I will chat to those at the top of their fields, from futurists in crypto and space travel to forecasters in business and tech. Together, we will ask the question, what's next? Today, I'm joined by Joel Dietz, artist, entrepreneur, investor, and founder of ArtWallet. Created earlier this year, ArtWallet fosters the ultimate solution for storing and owning NFTs, and also provides the playback of unique audio and visual content. Before this, Joel was a founding member of Ethereum, a platform allowing developers to build and publish next-generation decentralized applications. As an author, his book, Principles of Holonic System Design, looks into our outdated understanding of the world, and has been the most cited author on Google Scholar on cryptoeconomics. Joel, it's fantastic to have you on the show.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Such an honor. So let's start where it all began. How did you get into tech in the first instance?
I got into programming when I was 6 years old because I liked games and I could change games and modify them through changing code. And then, a lot of things happened since then, but I found that I really enjoyed programming and games, and took me a lot of interesting places.
Are you still enjoying it?
Yeah, I've designed a lot of games over the years, and but they've taken a little bit different paths. My favorite games to play have been board games and card games, and my programming things have taken me in, more blockchain and enterprise software and things. But I think they may be starting to merge now with the metaverse.
Well, we are living in very exciting times. I think the pandemic certainly has escalated things to a level we weren't anticipating with change. But let's go back to your time in Ethereum, because obviously that's one of the major players in the cryptocurrency market. Is one of the buzzwords of everything that's out there right now. Can you tell us about what your involvement was and how you got started in that?
Yeah, I was already following the writings of Vitalik and, super closely following everything in, tech news and digital currency world, and including talking to a lot of people in alternative economics that were doing things that were not cryptocurrencies. And then the day the white paper came out, I would say I had a nerdgasm. I was just like, this is amazing, so interesting. Immediately started sketching down all the things you could do with smart contracts, and concluded that it was totally going to reshape everything we think about organizational design and, joint stock companies, and just so much was going to be transformed as a result. And basically left everything I was doing to start working on Ethereum. And yeah, from that day.
And what's your relationship with Vitalik? Had you read the papers first before you met him, or how did that work?
I had read his writings for Bitcoin magazine and had wanted to meet him, but I had not met him up until that time. And then he came and stayed at my house a couple times during the kind of early part of Ethereum. So I got a fair bit of personal interaction with him, and then some of the other founders of Ethereum that passed through Silicon Valley. So kind of got to know most of the original team of Ethereum on a first name basis.
And how much of a threat are the new cryptos? For example, the Cardano project, how much of a threat to Ethereum is that?
I think there's a number of threats to Ethereum right now, and part of it is that the Ethereum Foundation, there's this big scandal actually going on right now. So I think there's some kind of dark secrets inside the Ethereum Foundation that haven't come to light, and that's probably the biggest threat, because the Ethereum still has the best developer community. It has the biggest vision. Vitalik is clearly a genius, and I don't think, broadly speaking, anyone else is up to his level. But Charles from Cardano is also a genius. Gav from Polkadot is also a genius. And if one of these platforms kind of fails to execute or gets caught up in scandal or something like that, I think it gives a huge opportunity for someone else to surpass them.
Okay, now you started the hugely successful Ethereum project MetaMask, the wallet. How did you come up with that idea, and why do you think it reached the heights it did?
Yeah, backtracking to 2012, I made the first ever digital currency browser extension wallet. It was a tipping app, and you could do it, and I shut it down because there wasn't enough interest in it at the time, and I had some regulatory issues because it wasn't a pure cryptocurrency, even though I had the intention to decentralize things over time. So I had that experience of building multiple browser extensions, and I had the experience of building all of the Ethereum communities in the Silicon Valley, California, basically started all of them. So we had a community of hundreds of engineers that were really interested in Ethereum. I think we were up to like 5,000 in that one meetup group or something. So I came to DevCon 0, which was the first serious developer engineer meetup of the Ethereum community. There may be 40 or 50 of us at this place in Berlin. And everyone had already built pretty cool downloadable clients, wallets. One was called Mist, one was called Alice Zero. But no one had really built anything serious yet in JavaScript, at least like officially sponsored by the Ethereum Foundation. And it was clear to me that people were going to consume things in a browser context. So that was, just dApps were going to be built in browsers. People weren't necessarily going to want to download a new client. And the user experience that people were used to was more of a browser type experience. Besides the fact that, I've been in the industry for a long time, so I knew a lot of UI, UX kind of, people were very fine-tuned, user experience oriented. And they were most used to working with technologies they knew, like JavaScript. So I was pushed heavily in that direction. There were other people there that also thought that was a good idea. And basically, I went in a room with Gav and Vitalik and said, guys, if I go back to Silicon Valley and get a team to work on this kind of JavaScript stuff and like browser extensions specifically, would you fund it? And they said, yes, we could do it. We're just setting up this, Ethereum Dev Grants program. So it will be like the first grant basically from the Dev Grants program. So I went back basically with that intention and then rounded up some people there were maybe like 5 developers at that point in the Bay Area who had built serious things with some sort of snippets of JavaScript. So I kind of talked to everyone. One of them was working for Apple at the time. And he said, I would totally quit my job at Apple to like work on this full time if we could, guarantee some, money that would pay my salary, because he had a kid and wife and couldn't just like work for free forever, unlike us other, people who were basically all working for free at that point on Ethereum. So that was basically it. So then we applied to Y Combinator. Y Combinator rejected us. In the interview that they said after, they're like, we don't really know exactly what people are going to do with smart contracts. It's not really clear it's a big thing. I was like, all of us were like, it's a big thing, guys, trust us, Ethereum. But it was still early enough in the day that even the Y Combinator people didn't seem to really understand the potential of Ethereum. And that was like basically the story. And then at some point later on, it was an open source project basically that time with the kind of, I wrote the whole grant for whatever the Ethereum Foundation and all that. And then at some point they basically consensus, I guess it has kind of like a backdoor into Ethereum somehow. So they basically made it a consensus project and didn't really credit me for very much after that.
Well, amazing. Well, we can congratulate you here at Metaverse on your vision. So well done on that. Your book, Principles of Holonic System Design, looks at all the different outdated practices. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there were maybe like half of the core team of Ethereum at the launch was like really into this idea of holons. And in fact, I also had half of them basically signed off to create some like living accelerator, which I ended up creating in and of myself, like basically a nest where people could come in and basically have synergistic interactions with each other. That would lead to product creation and everything else, including games, because we actually bonded over playing a lot of these interesting games. So that was like a huge hotbed for, Ethereum developers in Silicon Valley, and basically where the MetaMask team came together. And but it was built on a concept that was basically this holons, which is by this philosopher Arthur Koestler, who was talking about the integration between biological systems and how they coordinate, at various scale factors. So like at the level of a cell, at the level of an organism, at the level of social organisms, and how we can basically describe that, as far as nested circles, almost like where each one is kind of a larger organism, and then you consciously decide to participate in a larger organism. And to me, it's similar to some of the concepts in like libertarianism, or what von Mises called like praxology, and that basically people are becoming more conscious about the nature of the social organizations they participate in. And then as they become conscious, they can choose to basically organize and have like a system for describing that. So I was very exciting to me. There were definitely other people who were really into it. Mihai, who basically was the editor for Bitcoin magazine and one of the original Ethereum founders, was really into this concept. And probably I'm the one who like wrote about it the most since then. And, obviously people are building like financial applications and all that kind of stuff, DeFi, this, that, and other. But, there's still a number of us, I guess, who find this really interesting conceptually and see it as the foundation for not just how we reimagine like small organizations, but kind of how we reimagine all of society.
I think that's absolutely right. I think lots of people don't spend lots of time reflecting on the reasons why we are outdated in many areas of lives, particularly work. How do we, if we move forward in the future, how do we make people reflect on those things more? I mean, what's the kind of the way to persuade people to do things differently? How do we achieve that?
Well, I think Vitalik did a really good job in talking about DAOs, because he was the one who basically coined that term. And other people had used the word DAC before, which is about corporations, decentralized autonomous corporations. But he kind of said, there's other possibilities besides sort of standard corporate structures. And so, having a joint stock company is one way, but there's a larger type of things. And one of the great things about Ethereum and the world around it is that people kind of learn by doing and making experiments and trying new types of social models and, trying to make them ideally at least transparent and, as automated or functional as possible. So I think as someone who's a builder myself, I often think really the best way is just to get out there and build something. And you learn that some of these things have flaws or the technology isn't well enough developed to like really build something at scale, but it's, an iterative learning process. So as much as I love to write, long philosophical treatises and stuff, I still think that like fundamentally, you have to go out there and build something and try to use it.
Okay. So cryptoeconomics, cryptocurrency has the potential to change the world in so many different ways in terms of how we interact, how we transfer money, all those different things. Can you delve into the concept of cryptoeconomics a little bit for us?
Yeah, so original cryptoeconomics was like, 10, 15 people who joined a Skype group because Ethereum was basically organized by a bunch of Skype groups, like right after the launch of the white paper. And different people came from either a hard economics background or a math background or game theory background. And everyone knew that like game theory and some of these things was really important for designing consensus systems about, basically how you can automate. And, Ethereum solved this really important problem called the ghost problem to kind of get like lost uncles. It's a little bit confusing, but it was like one of the main things that allowed Ethereum to have like a fast block speed. And that was kind of like the applied side, but there were also some of us who were looking, hey, like, how does this affect the rest of society? Like, what are the social problems, that we can solve with this? And how can we ensure as well that like what we're doing is actually having a positive impact in the rest of the world? Because, as people sometimes associate crypto with scams, and obviously there are a lot of scams in crypto, but, there's also a positive or potential social function that we can map and say, this is how we know we're doing something positive. And if you go to an organization like Google or some of these big, organizations, they have a reasonably clear social philosophy embedded in them, Ray Dalio and Bridgewater and things like that. And so I think for some of us, at least, that's what we hoped cryptoeconomics would become, is like kind of a science of not just how can we build these systems, but how can we also model the future of smaller systems and societies to ensure that these things are growing in a positive direction.
What are your thoughts on the crypto community at large? I mean, I think crypto guys and girls are so passionate about their particular currency that they support, their particular coin. You go on Twitter and people it's almost like a pop group fandom in some ways. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's cool. I mean, I think there is a little bit where people who are suspicious of crypto know that there's like, a Ponzi psychology thing that you get a coin and you try to get everyone else to try to get your coin. And that I think scares people away, but, both legitimately and non-legitimately. But I mean, the reality is that you're building something from scratch that has never been built before, is totally unknown in the history of currency systems and political systems and whatever else. And it's like very exciting, if you look at like a lot of other like social movements or political movements, a lot of them have like devolved, I would say, almost into like, very simple slogans, and basically everyone is like fed, information by Facebook's algorithms and then fighting each other on the internet for like, I don't know, what I consider for the most part to be kind of stupid things. So there's a whole other world of like, hey, look, we have all the tools we need to build the future of, social systems. This is something we should be excited about, and we should channel our energy into like building things so that, if other things are going to collapse, then we at least have something that can provide us, some safety net, if not a whole foundation for the future of society.
So I'm going to ask you a double question now. First of all, Where's this all going to go? What it's going to look like in 10 years? And also, what are the other tech advancements and things that you find personally quite exciting that you think they're going to change the world?
Yeah, I went from like a very early Ethereum enthusiast to, making some money with Ether. I sold off quite a lot at like $12 and then investing it in other types of projects, including like Burning Man related stuff and donating to that. And then, VR, AR experiences. I went pretty deep in kind of the future of artificial intelligence and game design and just other things that I've had a, longstanding curiosity in. And I think like, the future is definitely a synergy of those things. Not just like one needs to dominate, and they have things to complement with each other. And a lot of them really come down to how do we know, to back to the Holonic thing, but how do we know that we're getting better and happier and healthier, along the way? And how can we basically design the thing? So I think in some ways these are different tracks. Like when I talk about the metaverse, I always talk about AR, VR technology. I always talk about digital assets, but I also talk about, brain chemistry and, the neurobiology and, basically the psychedelic research, things where people are really understanding how our brain works and finding the ways to like fine tune them and modify them and give us access to things that we might not normally have as far as, cognitive structures. And I kind of think we're like reaching some kind of renaissance where those things are becoming more and more accessible to more people. The barriers to entry are decreasing, and it's becoming like a global thing where people can, one person in India who's like 15 years old can pick up an Ethereum thing. I'm actually, advising a couple projects that are in the educational world right now. And basically they can learn the fundamental building blocks of like Web3 and then start building their own metaverse thing. And it's just, I don't know, to me, it's super exciting.
No, I completely agree with you. But what about the other things? I mean, what else is there? I mean, is it artificial intelligence? What are the things that you also enjoy following other than crypto?
I try to follow, actually, I have a background as well in doing research in comparative mythology, which goes into the formation of, let's say, like how people build their belief systems, how they evolve over time. I did a research recently on the emergence of UFO religions and kind of how they're popping up in different parts of the world and people's belief systems and kind of how they evolve, including like the, Burning Man, how Burning Man and the mythology behind Burning Man evolved. So I try to keep my, and I have a background a little bit in doing like Taoism. Like my first university undergrad thesis was on comparative Buddhist and Christian epistemology. So it's like kind of more philosophical topics, but when they merge with things like neuroscience and hard science, I find them extraordinarily thrilling. So I try to keep up on the academic research in a few different categories of interest. And quantum physics as well. Like I don't know that as well, but I do know a lot of the applied side in the quantum research centers. I was just helping some people organize some IP out of the Quantum Research Center in Russia at Skolkovo. So, there's like a lot of cool stuff out there. And for me, blockchain is one subset of it. And,
Yeah, we're changing the world, right? One block at a time. So what are your thoughts on sort of big tech and the control that some of the sort of social media companies and other things have on our lives? Are we all likely to see massive disruption in this space? We're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, you sort of rebranding potentially as something like Metaverse or something like this. It was a place and time for Facebook and the ilk. What's going to happen next around that space?
I think Philip Morris and Facebook as kind of similar categories, to be perfectly honest. Like, I think the algorithms are a little bit out of control and they're not really adapted to human good. They're kind of, how can we maximize the amount of time spent on these platforms? And when you see people sometimes who've grown up in these native sort of environments, the effects can be quite detrimental both to their happiness. I think it's creating a lot of unhappy people. And I think it's also creating people with very short attention spans. So I think in some ways, like the Facebook, as it is currently structured, is kind of creating this sort of zombie apocalypse for the rest of society, to be frank. But I don't necessarily know if that's the fault of the Facebook execs or just sort of like, we discovered these algos for attention and now they're just, racking up as much profit as they can. So I think there needs to be a pretty serious rethinking of these things, and maybe it'll come from the Web3 community or other people that are seriously committed to, stewarding the future in a way that for-profit corporations can't.
Thank you. And so let's talk about you again. What does the future hold for you, Joel?
I am having this project Metaverse. We're basically a platform for creating metaverses and having corporates be able to build their own metaverses and really showcasing some of the really fine art stuff, because I've been involved in the arts community for my whole life, and find always, super high synergies with people who are very dedicated to beautiful experiences. And since this NFT stuff exploded recently, I found a lot of amazing fine artists kind of come into my community, including on like the very cutting edge of like AR, VR experiences, and like the neurofeedback from your brain, where the art evolves as your brain is evolving. So I want to stay really similar. I mean, it's kind of what I've been doing for a long time, but staying at the forefront, really the cutting edge of these technological fields as they evolve, with really the highest end experiences, and also providing the kind of legal infrastructure. I am excited about the history of jurisprudence and how law evolves and stuff like that, that comes in and basically builds something that can really allow society to transition. There's kind of this like old school philosophy of, scarcity versus abundance kind of mindsets, which sometimes is not that well explained, but I think it's a real thing. And that if you think of life and things as zero-sum games, and a lot of people, because of their background or even ancestral history, they fight wars, you get a certain amount of land, and you have to kill other people in order to get more land, and then that's like the scarce resource is, create cycles of violence basically on this planet that are unnecessary. And if you start thinking of things as like, hey, I can make a game in the metaverse, and then I, can experience the wealth, and I can share it, and I can invest in new things. It's a transition, but it really takes us away from some of these, let's say, destructive zero-sum outcomes.
Well, listen, Joel, it's been amazing talking to you. I'm looking forward to spending time in the metaverse with you very soon. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for all your wonderful views on everything we've discussed. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
You've been listening to Metaverse with me, Francis Hellier. Thank you to my guest, Joel Dietz, for a fantastic conversation. Tweet us at MetaversePod with any suggestions or feedback. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please do share a link on social media. You can sign up to receive an email when a new episode drops at our website, metaverse.fm.